I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 16, 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day.
This is Umar Ahmed for IFL TV, proudly sponsored by Everlast. I'm at the headquarters of Frank Warren. I'm joined by Frank Warren himself. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm okay. What about yourself?
I'm all good, thanks. We won't talk about the Premier League or anything like that. We'll go straight into boxing.
I don't know about that. That's more interesting at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe for yourself. Not as a
new manager yet.
No, but you're telling me Sam Allardyce is coming in.
That's what I was hearing this morning. It was like he's going to take the Chelsea job.
Probably still be a better manager than Graham Potter. Anyways, moving on. Let's just go straight into it. Frank, what did you think of Anthony Joshua's performance on the weekend?
What did I think of it? I thought he did what he had to do, but he done it very tentatively, and I understand why. There's no fireworks there, but he come through it, and he's got the win under his belt.
Okay. Is that how you expected him to perform and fight?
I thought he would try and make a statement, but that wasn't to be. And I don't think he lets that right hand go like he used to, and that happens a lot of times with guys who are big punchers who suddenly get caught themselves and so forth. And I think as he's thrown his right hand, as it's landed, he's basically pulling back, because obviously when you do throw big shots, you commit and throw them, you leave yourself exposed. And I think he's worried about the counter. But as I say, he did what he had to do, and he's got through his fight, and hopefully that'll give him some confidence, rebuild his confidence up.
The talk beforehand from people at DAZN and Matchroom was, of course, the main priority is for Joshua to get the win, but also to look good and build up his confidence and get a spectacular knockout in order to make a statement, and then you can push for the likes of Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Joyce, etc. So it did go to points. He didn't drop Franklin in the fight. So you talked about, confidence for Anthony Joshua after that, but do you really think there would have been a confidence boost after that performance?
Look, he's 33 years of age. He's a two-time world champion. Was he world champion, 7-8 years? Yeah. Olympic gold medalist. He ain't gonna, he's not gonna change his style. It's not going to be any different. There's not going to be a lot of difference from it. He is what he is. So if he wants to fight these guys, then he's going to have the confidence, not rebuild it. He's going to have the confidence to get in there and trade and try and win the fights. If they're looking to keep giving him warm-ups, he could come unstuck in one of those. And I don't think anybody's going to buy into that anyway. This is not a novice. He's 33 years of age. And any of those guys he gets in with, he knows he's going to be in a war with all of them.
So having said that, do you think his stock went up or down on Saturday night?
I think people are buying to any fight, at this moment in time. Of course, people are buying to any fight with AJ, whether he's fighting a Tyson Fury, a Joyce, or Wilder. They'll buy into that for obvious reasons. But after that, I don't think they will buy into him.
Carl Froch was quite blunt in his assessment of Anthony Joshua. He said that since the Ruiz loss in New York, he hasn't been the same fighter. Do you go along with that?
Yeah, I agree with him on that. I think even before the Ruiz fight, a couple of times he was getting caught a lot in fights, wobbling a few times. And I think the Ruiz fight, a guy who came in at the last minute, was he a week of the fight, substitute, whatever it was, came as a substitute. I think they just took everything out of him. He's not looked the same fighter since to me. And he seems, as I say, boxes more tentatively now. He doesn't box with any real assurance in any fight. Did well in the second fight against Usyk. He'd done much better in that second fight. But it wasn't like he was in there, and I'm looking at somebody who really had a lot of belief in himself. And I don't know if he's lost that self-belief, where he's got it or not. Only he knows that. But what it did for me, the fight on Saturday, it put in perspective the Usyk. Everyone's been going crazy about Usyk, and he's a marvellous cruiserweight. And I look at the fight he had with Derek Chisora, and I look at the Usyk fights, and I look at this fight, and for me, it tells me a lot about Usyk as well.
Elaborate on that.
Well, I just don't think Usyk is a monster that everybody says he is. I really don't. And we'll find that out, and especially if we get this fight on with Daniel Dubois, which we're all working on, be interesting, because he's going to be there with a young guy who can punch, who's a natural big heavyweight. That's going to be quite an exciting fight. Get that on, that's going to be a very exciting fight. But in the meantime, I just, I think a lot of people got carried away with those wins. I really do.
We'll come on to Usyk Dubois in due course. Did you watch it on the night, Anthony Joshua?
No, I'm going to be very honest. I went to see Arsenal. We won 4-1, and we got on the old piss there, and as a result of it, had a few drinks, and I got home and I'd done what old geezers do. I was sitting there waiting for it, and I fell asleep. And I watched the playback of it a few hours later in the early hours of the morning.
Okay. I take it you knew the result, though. You hadn't switched your phone on.
I didn't know the result. No, I didn't want to see the result. I just wanted to watch it back, and I watched it back as it was.
His fights were always very exciting, Anthony Joshua. Obviously did tremendous numbers on box office, and he used to be a monster and a knockout artist, really. How would you assess his style right now, Anthony Joshua?
Well, I think he was a monster. I mean, he won the Olympics. He won the Olympics in the UK. He was a man of the moment, wasn't he? He signed with Matchroom. I mean, a few of us were talking to him and trying to do a deal with him. But he signed with Sky. That was what it was all about. And he got that great build-up from Sky and done great numbers. Charles Martin wasn't the most dynamic heavyweight champion in the world. He got his belts after Tyson basically gave up all the belts through the problems that he had. And he was in the right place at the right time, came through. He had a great fight, a very entertaining fight with Klitschko. He got caught himself, maybe a Klitschko a few years ago may have stopped him. But it's the same, it's the Klitschko who, nearly 2 years or 10, whatever it was, 20 months before, was taken to school by Tyson Fury in Germany. But the public took to him, and it was great for British boxing. It's great for heavyweight boxing, and he done fabulously well. What do I think of him? I think where he's been caught a few times now and wobbled a few times in fights, I think he is. I don't want to use the word safety first, but I think now he doesn't commit himself to throwing the big shots like he used to. That's what big punchers do. That's why they get caught, like he got caught. When you're throwing big shots, you're committing yourself. You throw that right hand, if you let it go, you let the full right hand go, that chin's out because your arm's over here, it's out. If you're just placing it there, you're putting it there, then obviously you're not stopping guys. And I think I just think he wanted to get through the fight, and that's what he did. And I think he wanted to get through the second fight with Usyk. It was the same thing. For me, if you're in that position, you're getting a shot at the world title, then it should be everything. It should be, shit or bust. That's how I look at it with them. We get that opportunity, and he's not. For me, he's not the same as AJ. Can he revert back to what he was? We will see. As I said earlier, and I'm repeating myself, he's 33 years of age. Can he do it? Could he do what he did in the past? Can he do that today to a Tyson Fury? Can he do that to a Joe Joyce? To a Wilder? No, I don't think he can. Not in what I've seen. I think they'll all be a bit too much for him, and I do think that, especially with the likes of Tyson and Joe, and even with a Wilder, I think they just have too much for him. I think they have too much firepower for him.
A lot of observers in the arena, people in the media, and people who know Anthony Joshua within boxing, there was a sentiment of slight sorrow for him because he's been, carrying British boxing since he came out, the Olympics and went on that, world title run. And obviously Tyson had his issues at that time and wasn't really around in the boxing scene. So, Anthony was carrying the sport. If people feel like, the pressure, the toll it's taken a toll on him. I mean, he doesn't look the same. Did you feel that? Did you feel a bit sorry for him?
I feel sorry for anybody, like when you're looking at somebody and they're not the same guy. Listen, that happens to everybody in all walks of life. One day you wake up, you're not the same guy. I mean, I do that a lot, and I'm being told that a lot. But as far as he did for a while, not saying he didn't carry British boxing. He was like the figurehead for a time, and it happens. And I've seen that again with lots of different fighters doing that. But Tyson for the last how many years now? Was it pre-COVID? He's been carrying British hopes as well. He's the guy out there who's been doing the business in the heavyweight division, and we've got other guys coming through now. It is a shame when you see a fighter not, basically saying he's not the same guy he was. But the only way you're going to find that out is when it gets down to the real nitty gritty, when he gets in there with one of the A-list heavyweights, and then you'll see what he's got. And everybody's got an opinion. We've all got opinions, and some of us get the opinions wrong. And who knows? Maybe he might be able to dig deep and do it. I don't think Barry Hearn believes that he's there, because he never wanted him to fight anybody anyway. And I think he said that again on Saturday night. Was it to you he was talking to? He said, he don't need no more warm-up fights. He's 33 years of age. He's been there. He's done it. What he needs now to see where, what's left in the tank. Is there anything in the tank? Can he prove the doubters wrong? And there's only one way you're going to do that, is to make one of these fights, get in there and do the business.
Last one on Saturday night. What did you make of the events after the final bell?
We've seen that a few times in the past, haven't we? It's not the end of the world. I think some people get in there who shouldn't be in there, mind their own, to make themselves busy. Trainers, fighters, camps, that's nothing new. I mean, could do without it, but that's nothing new. We've seen things like it before, but outsiders should keep their nose out of it.
Okay. Frank, am I right in saying that Tyson Fury's on holiday at the moment?
He's away at the moment. You're absolutely right in saying that. And I haven't spoken to him. We exchanged a couple of texts, and that's it. And I said to him, I'll see him when he gets back.
So no conversations about boxing at all?
Nope, nothing at all.
Okay. Throughout the fight week and after Joshua's fight, there were multiple conversations from media members to Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith about trying to get this fight on, because obviously Fury Usyk's collapsed. So had Joshua won, which he did, they're looking to get that fight on and start negotiations with your son George, because it seems like they've actually got a working relationship there with George. So have they reached out?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think George has had any conversation with Two Sugars at all.
Okay. Throwing me off a little bit there, Frank. I didn't expect that reply. So in terms of, you've had no conversation with Tyson at all about boxing. So at the moment, this is a dead issue, isn't it?
Well, it's not a dead issue. I mean, it's just we've had no conversation. Until I speak to Tyson, determine what his views are and his thoughts are, I can't make any comment, because if you make a comment, then everybody jumps on the bandwagon and says, what we should be doing, what shouldn't be happening. But there isn't any. So, as I say, we're all, we just take it as it comes. And, I mean, I've got to tell you something. Anybody who knows anything about boxing, watch that on Saturday night. Watch AJ on Saturday night. Would give him a big chance against Tyson. They can have the bet with me direct. Contact me. I'll take their bets if we get it on.
What sort of money are we talking?
Whatever they like.
Okay. What I mean by it's a dead issue, until Tyson gives you the green light to start negotiations. It is a dead issue, isn't it?
It's a dead issue. It's a non-issue at the moment. Yeah. So once we speak, once he says what he wants to do, I don't know what he wants to do at the moment. And it's a big disappointment, all the troubles that we had over the Usyk situation. I don't want to go down that road again. I mean, we all spent a real lot of, put a lot of hard work, endeavours and hard work to get it done. In the meantime, contrary to what people keep saying, Tyson was training his balls off. And in fact, he sent me a photo and a video I think it was on Thursday, of him on the scales. Made the weight. He was on fighting weight already. He's in great nick. He's in great form. He's fit. So he was obviously disappointed.
Frank, just a couple of more on Tyson and whether the fight with Joshua could happen. Eddie made several comments saying that the framework of the deal or the structure of the deal is in place from the negotiations that were taking place in December with your son George. Is that true? Is that an accurate assessment of things?
Well, there's nothing in place till Tyson says what he
No,
wants.
I'm saying. So let's just say.
Was there a framework? There was a framework in place, not a framework, there was a basic agreement for everything except that AJ never had a trainer and was never going to be ready to fight on that day. Other than that, it was marvellous.
Okay, but other the points of terms, they've been agreed. It was a 60-40 split.
Agreed. I mean, we agreed. I mean, Tyson put it out there, didn't he? Day one, the split and everything. So there was no problem with any of that. We dealt with all of the issues, except he was never ever going to be available to fight.
Okay. Someone who has given the green light, if he gets past Zhang, is Joyce. He very much welcomes that fight. But a tough night against Zhang. Let's talk about that first, April 15th. Two guys with great pedigree going in there. But I'm confident he'll juggernaut him.
Well, I've got confidence in him, but it is a tough fight. I mean, he's a much tougher opponent than Franklin is, that's for sure, Zhang. So it's a tough fight for Joe, but if he comes through it and they've given a green light, good. Let's get it on. Let's get it done. Not a problem.
We'll come on to that in a sec about Joshua and Joyce. There's a couple of more actually things that popped into my head about Tyson and Joshua. At a post-fight press conference, Eddie admitted for the first time that it'd be a big underdog going into the fight with Tyson Fury. He's always maintained that Joshua knocks out Tyson Fury. What's your reaction to that?
Well, for once we agree.
Okay. Now, Frank, I will have to ask you about this situation. I know it's actually not directly to do with you, but you are in Team Fury, and John Fury has made some comments recently about Sugar Hill. Obviously, Sugar was here in camp with Lawrence Okoli and also training Tyson Fury. From what you just said, Tyson Fury was on fighting weight, etc., and he was gearing up for that fight with Alexander Usyk. Sugar did do some interviews on the Okoli fight week where he said, he had a return ticket back to the States straight after Lawrence's fight, and he was here to train Lawrence Okoli and wouldn't really elaborate about the Fury-Usyk fight. And since then, John Fury has said that he needs sacking. I'm sure you've seen the comments. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm sure he's got a return ticket because that fight was made how long ago, the Okoli fight?
About a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Well, it wouldn't be a month ago. It's got to be a good 2 months.
2 months ago.
Yeah, so they would have obviously bought those tickets up front, like I would do for anybody who was appearing on one of the shows. The quicker you buy the plane tickets, the cheaper it is, and that's I'm sure of that. As regarding what he said, I what I've seen of it, I didn't quite understand why he did say that, to be quite honest, because he was up there. I've got photographs on my phone that if you want to see them, you can see them, and shows you how fit Tyson looks. And so I don't understand that. I have no idea what it said. And as regarding what John said, well, that's what John said. That's John. John says a lot of things, and he's his dad, and that's his opinion.
Okay. Let's go back to what we were talking about in terms of Joshua and Joyce. As I said, Joyce has given the green light for things to proceed with Joshua should he beat Zhang. I just want to find a video, bear with me 1 second, from Anthony Joshua speaking to our channel during the fight week of Franklin. Let me just get it because I want to get your reaction to it. Where are we? Right, so if you just take that.
Dillian White, not so much, but it is what it is. Joyce interests me the most.
Then great, good. Now my man's got a win, and we're good to go.
I like the Joyce fight as well. I think that's one that interests people, and Joyce is from the same country as me, so it makes sense. Good,
2 British fighters in. That's a good fight to make, isn't it? Joe's got to do the business. He does the business on the 15th. Don't worry about them calling us. We'll call them. And it's a good fight for him, for AJ. When you look at that fight, that is a great fight for him. You know why? It gives him an opportunity to get a position back in the rankings, because Joe is the interim champion. He wins that fight. If he were to beat Joyce, big if he were to beat Joyce, then he becomes the interim champion, which is the mandatory he's got the mandatory defence for the WBO title, which changes the game for him. So yeah, I'm sure he wants that fight, and we'd certainly love to accommodate him. And I can talk about that because Joe wants the fight.
Yeah. Frank, one's with DAZN, one's with BT. But as I said, go back to the Fury-Joshua negotiations. BT and DAZN were on the same page. The broadcasters were both happy for that fight to take place and share the broadcast. As I said, George, your son, has a working relationship now with people from Matchroom who represent Anthony Joshua. So that isn't going to be an issue, is it?
I shouldn't think so. I'm sure something can be worked out. I mean, if everybody wants to make it work, then you work something out, and I don't think that'd be a problem. You know, but you got to remember, Jay, whatever way you want to look at it, the guy who provided he beats Zhang, the guy who's holding the title is Joyce. That's the position.
It's going to have to be a split broadcast, of course.
Well, I'm saying I'm sure we can work something out. I'm sure we can work something out on that.
And as you said, Joe holds the WBO interim title, so from a heavyweight position and standing in terms of officially in rankings, obviously he's ahead of Anthony Joshua, yeah. But also when these negotiations commence, if they do, so you can see that Anthony Joshua's a big star, and commercially you have to factor that into the negotiations.
I think he is a big star, but he needs a real dance partner now. I don't think people are going to buy into Joyce fighting another warm-up fight at all. He's 33 years of age, and he said it himself. It's a fight that he likes. So if he likes it, let's try and get it done.
Honestly, how does the juggernaut get on with Anthony Joshua?
I think he beats him. I think he'll stop him. Okay. I really do think he'll stop him.
If Joe Joyce was in that ring on Saturday night instead of Jermaine Franklin, you believe he would have knocked Anthony Joshua out?
I think he'd knock both of them out.
On the same night?
Yep.
Okay, very confident talk. What's the reports been like from Las Vegas? Obviously, Joe Joyce loves to do his camps in Las Vegas, preparing for Zhang. What you been hearing?
I'm hearing he's looking really good, and he's doing really well out there. He's gone there. He's sacrificing a lot to go and train abroad. He'll be back. I think he gets back the end of this week. So he gets back, and then he'll be looking to acclimatise here and get back onto the same time zone as we're all on at the moment, and be ready to go. But I'm hearing he's looking excellent in the States. He's really got the bit between his teeth. And you got to remember, coming off of a brilliant win. That last fight he had against Joe Parker was a good fight. That was an excellent fight to watch. It was an exciting fight to watch, and he came through that with flying colours.
Yeah, talking about wins that give you confidence. Obviously, Joe Joyce has had some very good wins in his career. Daniel Dubois, Carlos Takam, Bryant Jennings, and these were early on in his career as well. But Joseph Parker's a former heavyweight world champion. It was a box office fight, and he'd never been stopped before, Joseph Parker. So the way that ended, how much confidence do you think that's going to give Joe going into April 15th and future fights?
I would think a lot. Joe's dramatically improved as over the last couple of years. He really has sort of come into his own. He's a tough guy. There's times he takes a shot to go and land a couple of his own, but he shows what a good chin he's got. Not I like seeing guys get clips, but he has been caught. But he's just coming on by leaps and bounds. And as I say, that performance last year, that was it was a really good heavyweight fight and one of the good heavyweight performances. I looked last year at great heavyweight performances. That was up there with Tyson and up there with Usyk's wins.
That is a good point, though. If he has got one weakness, perhaps, Joe, is that, at the start of fights, he doesn't seem to be all there. He's taking shots and he grows into the fight later on. But Zhang, one of the heaviest punchers in the division, and he starts very fast. So those first 2 or 3 rounds, you're going to be right on the edge of your seat.
I think so. I think they're going to. It really does look a great fight. I mentioned you the last time we spoke. They've got a similar pedigree. They're both silver medalists from different Olympic games. So they've done fantastic as amateurs, and as pros, they've done everything that's been asked of them. His last fight that he had, Zhang, against Hrgovic, who's now the number 1 mandatory for the IBF title against Usyk. That was called for. I thought, and I think everybody who see that fight thought that he won it. I think the only people who thought Hrgovic won was maybe Hrgovic and his connections. Other than that, everybody I know in boxing thought Zhang won it. So this is going to be a tough fight, and you've got to take your hat off to Joe for going in there and taking a tough fight. He could have took an easier option, but he chose not to do so, and that says a lot about Joe Joyce.
Yeah, I mean, he's in that WBO interim position, and I'm sure as his promoter looking at Zhang, who was rumoured to be fighting, he was in talks with quite a few fighters, I believe.
Well, he was in talks to fight AJ, and AJ didn't want it.
What with Zhang, yeah.
At that time, they were both with Matchroom, and they didn't want it. Maybe they know something we don't. I hope not.
We'll find out April 15th at the Copper Box. Expecting a big rating on BT Sport for this, and also how tickets going for the Copper Box?
Tickets are going well. I think it's nigh on sold out. I haven't had the reports today, but that'll get a good rating. Everybody will be watching that. I mean, look, heavyweight boxing is really sexy at the moment. I mean, it's really flying, and we've had, and that's for our shows. We've had some great shows since the start of the year. Some really good shows on BT, and they've rated well.
Right, let's come on to Daniel Dubois. So the latest we heard from the WBA is that they received a letter about his injury saying it's all clear, he's good to go. Of course, negotiations have begun between yourself and Alex Krassyuk, who represents Alexander Usyk. Let's just talk about that injury first, which was obviously suffered against Kevin Lerena at Tottenham Hotspur in December. How bad was it? And he is fully recovered now and good to go against Alexander Usyk.
Well, how bad was it? It was a bad injury. He was very hampered in the fight, as you could see. Couldn't plant his feet properly, but he fought through the pain barrier and stopped Lerena. A very good stoppage, having been in trouble himself. And he's had the operation. He had an operation, I think it's the first week of January, and he's now got the all clear to get back into training. I mean, he couldn't fight tomorrow or next month because he's obviously got a way to go, but come the end of June, July, when this fight will take place, he'll be good to go.
Okay. Right. Spoke to Alex Krassyuk during the week, and I asked him about the WBA split, which is traditionally 75-25 in terms of a champion and challenger point of view. But I did bring up, Daniel's a WBA regular champion, so is there a chance it goes up to 30% or just increases in general? And he said the rules do state even a super champion, which is Usyk, be a regular champion, Daniel Dubois, the WBA determine a split of 75-25. So is that correct, Frank?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but the point is, whatever happens, the fight, if we can't agree terms, it'll be ordered. So the fight will happen, which is good because it stops all the nonsense and so forth. It means that it will have to take place. So if we go to purse bids, we go to purse bids. I mean, we went purse bids with, if you remember, with Tyson, and everybody was complaining about the split on that for Dillian White. Yeah, it's all okay for Daniel to take the shit end of it.
Okay. I know your son George has met with Alex last week. From those conversations, do you believe a deal will be reached, or will it go to purse bids?
I don't know. If they don't agree, then it will go to purse bids. I mean, whatever happens, Daniel's going to be there facing him, and he's going to have to make that defence, and Daniel will beat him.
It's a big statement, that, Frank.
It is a big statement, but I believe in him, and I believe he can do it. And as I say, I got a lot out of that fight on Saturday. And it told me a lot about Usyk as well.
A lot of people watching this will question your comment about, Dubois will beat Usyk. How does he go about doing that?
I think he can stop him. He's got a good jab. He's got a very good jab, and he's a big puncher. And if he catches him, he will go, and he will catch him.
Frank, how do you expect this to perform on?
He's a big
Go
man.
on.
He's a very big man, Daniel. A very big man, and he's I think it's going to be his time. I really do think so. Look, I'm not an idiot, as though a lot of people think I am. I'm not an idiot. I'm not a bad judge, and I do think that my man has the beating of Usyk, the same as I felt Tyson had the beating of Wilder the first fight, and he certainly proved it in the second. I felt he knocked him out in the second fight, I feel he has to beat him a bit.
How do you expect this to perform on pay-per-view, Usyk Dubois? Because during, when the Fury Usyk fight collapsed, a lot of your comments to myself and other media members were based around Usyk's commercial value and what he brings, and if he's not going to fight Tyson Fury in this country, good luck getting the same amount of money for a Daniel Dubois, Hrgovic, etc. So, how do you think the numbers will be for this?
Do good numbers. I think it'll do good numbers because Daniel's had good ratings on BT. I think one of the fights he had was the highest rating they had that particular year. So it'll do well. He'll do well.
But there is a difference. That was on normal BT with Joyce, that fight you're referring to. There is a difference between that and going on box office, Frank.
Of course there is. But you got to get on box office. You got the eyeballs have got to see you in the first place. You can't just turn pro and you write them on box office. You've got to build your audience and they'll see him. And they've seen Usyk now, the audience over here, and they've seen Daniel fight. And what people will know is it will be a fight. It's not a rollover. I mean, it's a much better fight than watching AJ against Franklin on paper. Do you not think so?
Well, yeah, it's a unified champion going against an unbeaten, well, not unbeaten, he's obviously lost to Joe Joyce, but a hungry challenger.
Yeah, and that's it. And I think it's a fight that people will buy into. And if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. But we'll soon see. We'll also tell us how big a draw Usyk is.
You clearly didn't think he was.
Well, I don't think he's the draw against Tyson because Tyson's proven what he does. I mean, a guy who goes and sells 160,000 tickets in his last two fights, breaks box office records, that's Tyson Fury. I mean, that's a fact of life. Daniel's not done that. Of course he's not done it. But by the way, nor's Usyk.
And was a big point about, the commercial side of things with Tyson Alexander, the American factor as well, which isn't really going to be existent in this fight, if we're being honest, Frank.
Well, not according to everybody. Again, the argument that was being put forward about Usyk was that he's a big attraction in America. I mean, I had that conversation with Simon Jordan a couple of weeks ago, and he was, that was the point he was making about it. But he's not a big attraction as a heavyweight in the States. Daniel's had a few fights in the States which have been televised. He's been seen on there. He's been seen on ESPN Plus. But we'll see. And you've got to start somewhere. When Tyson had his first fight against Derek Chisora, there were 2,000 people in the building.
At Wembley Arena, yeah.
It's a fact of life. That's nothing against anybody. You start somewhere. There has to be a starting point. They didn't come in, Derek Chisora, Tyson didn't come in winning a gold medal from being, which was, there was being seen on terrestrial TV, winning that and become a darling of the British public. That didn't happen. But the work was put in by Tyson to get him where he's at now and the performances in the ring, and look where he's at. That happens, and Daniel Dubois should take a lot of take that on board and look at that and think to yourself, can I do that? Well, I'll be able to do it. Well, we'll see, won't we? If he beats Usyk, he's up there big time. So he's taking the opportunity. He's not ducking out of it. He's taking that opportunity, forcing the issue.
You say he's forcing the issue. You represent, obviously, Tyson Fury and Daniel Dubois. Now, I'm guessing this situation is probably 0.1%, but let's just say a miracle happened and, Fury Usyk talks started happening again to put it on in the summer. Would Daniel Dubois and yourself consider step-aside money?
I don't even want to go down there at the moment on that. It's not being evasive about it, Umar. It's, it was mentioned the other day, and I made a comment on it. I wish I never made the comment. Daniel wants to fight, and that's it. And it'll have to be something extra special, I think, for him to give up that opportunity. And the only way he would give it up, I'm quite sure, is if he was guaranteed to fight the winner. But that is not even where we want to be. What he's focusing on, what we're focusing on, is that big fight. And that's him and Usyk is a big fight. A big fight. It's a good fight. And everybody's going to have an opinion on it, and a lot of people are going to say, well, I'm talking a load of rubbish. We'll see.
Can I just ask you what also you told me at that lunch in Mayfair a couple of weeks ago, your gut feeling about this whole Fury Usyk collapse was Usyk's people and Wilder's people were going to try and do something in Saudi Arabia and navigate around this Daniel Dubois situation. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, they can't. The only way they can do anything is if they vacate the title. So it's
You guys aren't stepping aside.
It's a dead duck. It's a dead duck. So that's why they're having the negotiations now. So they're negotiating.
So we can confirm. We can confirm on this right now that Daniel Dubois is not stepping aside.
He's not stepping aside. That's not what we're working on. That's all.
Right. Okay. Talking about Deontay Wilder. Now I know you guys, actually, you and Deontay, have had, you've been fond of each other. He said some good things about you. You have as well throughout that trilogy. You've got a very good relationship with Shelley Finkel for loads of years. Deontay and Tyson bumped into each other at the Jake Paul and Tommy Fury fight in Saudi Arabia. Embraced. It was it was very respectful. Since then, Deontay's made some comments and he's accused Tyson Fury of being a cheater again.
I don't know why he says that, and I wish he wouldn't say it. I mean, I don't think he does himself any favours, any justification. They've been to the well 3 times, the pair of them, in 3, all different types of fights, but 3 epic fights. Shared the ring. Show Tyson some respect. He's not cheated. I mean, what did he cheat? Getting off the floor the first fight and coming back and he was cheated out of the first fight. He won that fight, Tyson. That was a bad decision. He won it, but he never cried about it. He got on with it. Second fight, there was no ambiguity about the result or anything. It was what it was. Tyson did what I said he would do. He'd stop him, and he did stop him. And the third fight was a bloody excellent fight. I mean, it's the best live heavyweight fight. Me, attended, not watching on film, but I attended. The atmosphere, the fight, it was just electric. And, he was part of that. It didn't happen to Tyson on his own. He was in the other corner. It takes 2 guys to bare their souls and do that in the ring. And he was part of that history. And he shouldn't demean it by calling Tyson a cheat, because he wasn't a cheat.
It is a shame to see. Obviously, we've seen Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, great rivals. They've been on American chat shows together, and they've become, okay with each other, even friends. Do you think Deontay and Tyson, after sharing one of the best trilogies in boxing ever, can get to that point one day? I
don't know. Tyson's put his hand out many occasions. He's not immediately after the fight in the ring. He went to the corner to, basically put his arms around him and embrace him. And it was like, it was a little bit of a cold shoulder there. So you can't, as I know all those Warren and Fury haters out there say that, all these different reasons. But Tyson was very magnanimous at the end of that fight and did what he had to do. And as regarding, I can remember years ago, there was a video called when it was the 3 heavyweights. It came out, George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, before your time.
A little bit.
Joe Frazier, a little bit. But they came over and we hosted the event at London Arena. And George Foreman was helping Muhammad, who at the time, he had the Parkinson's. It wasn't badly there, but he had the Parkinson's. But Joe Frazier, he would much rather have been on the moon to be there with him. He just didn't like him. He didn't like the things that were said to him, before the fights they had. There was no love there whatsoever with Joe Frazier. And sometimes it's like that. There's a bitterness there that that's never going to go away. And I hope that's not going to be the same with Deontay, because I think Deontay should be proud of the fact that him and Tyson put such epic fights on.
Do you think he's just not got over those 3 fights with Tyson?
No, he's not. Listen, this is a fella who was undefeated, for how many years? As a champion for 6 years. Yeah. Hardest punch, statistically, the hardest punching heavyweight out there. And Tyson went to the other guy's backyard, shed 11 stone in 6 months, had two sort of warm-up fights, and went in there and did it. That's what makes me laugh. It's talking about AJ having warm-up fights and whatever. Tyson was out the ring for 3.5 years. All that weight and came back and in there. So please, we're warm-ups out. At the end of the day, you want fights, champions go in there and do the business, win or lose. What champions always have is a champion's heart.
I know you have an Apple Watch, Frank.
No, it's to test my blood pressure when you're doing the interview.
Well, I wonder what it is when Simon Jordan's interviewing you.
I don't. Do I look like I lose my blood? Do I look like I got blood pressure with him?
He did.
I'm going to let him lend. I'll lend it to him next time.
Okay. A lot of this conversation has been about heavyweights. I promise you, this will be the last
You
one.
can say what you like. I'm not going anywhere. I can't get up. Even if I wanted to.
David Adeleye
Yeah.
went to the press conference during the week and confronted is maybe a strong word because there wasn't animosity or it wasn't going off between him and Fabio Wardley, but there was a competitive edge you could feel there. And David basically said, we're going to get this on. Fabio said, let me get through Saturday and yeah, we can look at it for sure. So let me start with Fabio's fight. Have you seen it? And what did you make of his stoppage win?
I think he done okay. Got through his fight. He done what he said he was going to do. Got through his fight. So now let's make that fight. David is it's another level, isn't it? It's these youngsters coming through now. It's the next generation of fighters coming through. Next level of fighters. And I think Fabio and David is an excellent fight that we'd all love to see. I'd love to see it. I've got to fancy my man. I do fancy him. I think he's an excellent young prospect, and I feel that if we can make the fight, I'd like to get it done and get it on. We are, by the way, just so you know, we are lobbying the British Boxing Board and Control for the fight that they instill David as the mandatory, and they should do now. He's 11-0, and he should be there.
Well, if that does happen and it gets mandated, obviously purse bids will be called and whoever bids the highest will get that fight. Yeah. One of the things which was a little bit odd to see during that conversation between David and Fabio, it's not really what fighters normally talk about, it's what promoters and managers talk about. But David was saying we're going to have it on BT Sport, and Fabio was like, no, it's got to be on DAZN. So, why are they talking about that? They're the fighters. They shouldn't really worry about that.
I know in David's case, the loyalty to BT. His career's been with BT, and BT have got behind him as well as we have, and that's his loyalty. You've got to take your hat to him. And I suppose Fabio feels the same way. He's with his team, but that won't stop the fight from happening because, if we can't agree terms where it's going to go, then let go to purse bids, and the winner can put it on their channel.
Yeah, and
get on with it.
Yeah, exactly that.
And get on with it, and then after that, David can come back and defend the title on BT.
Okay. Frank, in terms of also David Adeleye, I'm not sure if this is a step too much at this stage, but your son Francis Warren manages a heavyweight, hopefully I'll get this pronunciation right, Buatsi, I think I got that right, potentially could fight for a WBC silver title. Francis was telling me, and to put David in that fight. Is it too early? What are your thoughts?
It's not about too early. I think what we were focusing on, the fight David wants and the fight I want, and as much as I always want to do the best for my sons and family like you do want to do, but the fight we want is the British title fight. That's the one that matters at the moment. That's the one I think everybody wants to see. And after that, as I say, David comes through, then maybe we do make that fight. I haven't got a problem with that.
You believe David Adeleye knocks out Fabio Wardley?
I think he beats him. Yeah, I think he'll stop him.
Okay. Moving away from heavyweight talk, Robert Smith made some comments surrounding potential talks for Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. to be staged in Abu Dhabi on June 3rd, and essentially was saying anyone involved in that show who holds a British licence, which would, pretty much be everyone bar Conor Benn because he relinquished his one, there could be, repercussions about their licences and if they were to work in this country. So what were your thoughts on Roberts' stance?
Well, they're the regulations. I mean, you go and look at the rule book. The rule book, it's not just about Conor's connections, it's also about Junior's connections. He needs the consent of the board. Everybody who goes with him, his trainer, his managers, etc., also need permission from the board to make the fight. But I don't think they're going to make that fight. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to take that risk. If they do, I think that it'd be at this stage it'd be a silly thing to do. They need to clear up the ambiguity of what's happened with Conor. I think that I may be wrong, but I think Eubanks will have the rematch with Liam. Yeah. That's what I think happened. And I think he'll get knocked out again.
Okay. Conor Benn did go on his social media last night and say, I will be returning on June 3rd in Abu Dhabi. Eddie was, talking a lot about how the board are ringing up other commissions and telling those commissions not to license him, essentially. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, I have. I've had that in the past with fighters. I know they do it, and that's the case. There is a big problem about this fight, and that is the big problem is this cloud that hasn't gone away over the testing. It's as simple as that. The WBC, their findings were that the laboratories that tested the samples, the 2 samples from the 2 failed tests, there was no problems. They were clean. They came out with a reason why the samples were infected, or whatever you want to call it, which was his diet. And he said, Conor, to his credit, has said that that's nothing to do with that. Wasn't his case, which was in 270-page document and so forth. That's one his case. So that's it. So, but at the end of the day, you want to get your licence back. It's nearly a year now since all this nonsense happened. Go to the board. Go and get it done. Just go there. Just let them investigate. Go and get your 2 B samples. Let them be tested by a laboratory that all these various testing organisations use, and get it out there and get it done, and then get ready to fight. And even if you're going to get a ban, accept the ban and get on with it. All this other stuff is just a nonsense. I mean, there was an article in the Guardian this weekend with Don McRae, which was a very good and interesting article about this and other issues. And I feel that as much as it was a very good article, it weren't a good article for boxing. In as much that, again, there's that cloud there, and the only way you're going to remove that cloud is to get rid of this. There were other things in there which were quite interesting, but you can't go on like this. You can't go on. And that fight, the border control. I mean, Abu Dhabi, they want to be taken serious as a boxing commission? Is it Abu Dhabi Commission, or is it United?
I guess it would come under the UAE Commission.
Is the UAE going to be happy with that they're doing that? I mean, these are countries that obviously have very strict and strong views about drugs. Are they going to? I don't know, but it's all unsatisfactory, and it should be sorted out. And it should be sorted out. From Conor's perspective, it should be sorted out. I mean, he must feel like, God knows how he must feel at the moment with all this, what's happened with him and what's going down. But the only way you're going to settle the matter is to settle it through legitimate means, not trying to bypass things and so forth. And please, don't give me all the stuff about the haters about Chisora and David Haye. David Haye wasn't licensed. He didn't even appear before the board because of the fracas that they had in there. And please, the border control stated categorically that Derek Chisora's licence was not suspended. They didn't licence him anymore. And a question was asked, can he go elsewhere? And the answer was, you can do what you like. That's what happened.
Okay.
And it was nothing to do with drugs. Nothing to do. It was not a drug situation.
Last one on Conor Benn. We saw him in the public domain for the first time at the Joshua fight, and Gareth A. Davies approached him to get a comment for TalkSport. I don't know if you saw the clip where he slapped the mic out of Gareth's hand. What did you make of it?
Just a load of nonsense, isn't it? Just nonsense. It's just total nonsense, and it is what it is. I mean, I've got to tell you something. There's more being said now about people who don't get in the ring than people who get in the ring. I don't know what's going on in this sport. What happened to the fighters?
Well, there is a fight on May 27th, live on BT Sport. Mick Conlan bidding to become IBF featherweight world champion.
That's a good fight.
Tough fight against Lopez in Belfast. Happy to get that over the line on BT and have Mick Conlan back on BT Sport. Yeah,
it's a good fight for him. He's with, as you know, he's been with Matchroom. He's been with Top Rank for a while now, and we work very closely with them. And that's a fight that we've all, been working hard to make happen, and I'm delighted it's on there. It's a good fight. Be a good undercard as well. It's an excellent undercard.
Yeah, we'll talk about the undercard another day, because I know some of your fighters will be on that card, which will be a great opportunity on Mick Conlan's undercard.
It will be. It's great exposure for them, and it'll be a nice, hopefully be a real momentous night in Belfast. I'm looking forward to it.
Always a great atmosphere over in Belfast. Anthony Yarde, what's the latest with him? Have there been discussions about potential fight with Joe Smith Jr., Frank?
I've had quite a few conversations with Bob about it, Bob Aaron, and hopefully we're going to get somewhere on something or other. But whatever happens, Anthony needs to be out in early summer, and he needs to be in a fight a meaningful fight. He's capable. He showed that last time out. Although he got beat, he showed that he's up there with these guys, and I do think that there is a great future for him in that division, and I genuinely believe he can win one of the titles.
I know it was a loss, but his stock went up tremendously that night for Anthony Yarde. I'm sure he would have gained a lot of confidence as well on that night. So for now, is it just about keeping Anthony Yarde at world level?
Yeah, keeping it world level, keeping him. He needs to be busy. If you look at his record, he's not fought that regularly over the last 18 months or so, and we need to get him back in action and keep him up there, because I don't know what's going to happen with Bebatiev and Bivol. Hopefully they'll get it on, and then we'll see what happens with those titles. And they're obviously getting older, and I'm hoping that the experience that Anthony gained from the last fight, and maybe another couple of fights leading up to it, will get him in a position where if he fights the winner of that or one of them again, that we'll get another significant fight.
Well, a significant fight would have been Joshua Buatsi. He was having talks with...
Which we had talks over that, and it just didn't happen.
He was having talks with Matchroom about the Bivol fight. He was having talks with you about the Anthony Yarde fight.
We had talks with Matchroom about the Buatsi fight.
Oh, you were going to do Yarde Buatsi co-promotionally as well? Yeah.
There were talks with him. I know George was speaking with Eddie about it, but he'd left. He left them, but we had talks direct with him, because he told us that his contract was expiring, but it just didn't happen. He went across to Sky.
Yeah. What is your take on that now? Because he made some comments at his press conference when he signed with Boxer and Sky. He was asked about your proposal and offer for the Anthony Yarde fight, and he said he couldn't do it because you had options on him.
What do you mean had options on him?
Well, because you were going to put him in a fight with Anthony Yarde. Depending on that result, you were going to have some sort of options on him in terms of a further contract. Is that industry normal?
We would have liked to, if I put him in with Anthony, who's our guy, I would have liked to have had a rematch clause in there for that. Of course I would. Why wouldn't I?
It was the same reason he gave for why he didn't do the Bivol fight with Matchroom. It was the exact same reason.
And his 2 fights he's not done. Should have done them. Get on with it and get it done. When Anthony fought, we had to. When he fought against Lyndon Arthur, there was a rematch clause in there. We got the rematch on. Why wouldn't you do it? I don't understand. Sometimes the rematches can be a pain in the arse, but when you've got two guys like that, I genuinely believe that you get a good fight. You get a good fight. Who's he going to fight now? He's not going to fight Bivol, because Bivol, unless he's the mandatory, and if he's the mandatory, then he won't need to give options. But what's he going to do?
I think they're lining up for.
With the greatest respect to him, and I like Josh Buatsi. I like him, but I think my guy's done much better than him as a pro than he has. If you want to talk about who's more well known, I think Anthony Yarde is. For a guy who only had 11 fights as an amateur, he didn't win no gold medals Olympic medals, bronze medals. Didn't appear in the Olympic Games. He's done extremely well, but it's a fight I would love to make. I'd still like to make it, because I think all day long Anthony wins the fight. I really do fancy him now, even more so than before.
Okay, a couple of more things, please, Frank. We haven't spoken on camera since your Telford card, where we saw an unbelievable fight between Cain and Baluta.
Yeah.
Baluta getting the win. What are your thoughts on that fight?
I thought Cain won the fight. I thought Andrew won it. I think the referee missed a knockdown. Was it in about the 6th round? And obviously, if we'd have taken account on that, that would have been another point in the bag for him, or 2 points in the bag for him. I think he spat the gum shield out 2 or 3 times. Normally, you get a point taken away from that. I'm not knocking him for that because Baluta done extremely well to recover from that first round onslaught. He done extremely well. It was a great fight. It was a fabulous fight. And I don't take anything away from anyone. I did think that Andrew won it, though. And hopefully, we do have a rematch clause and we'll make that again.
Right, okay. So that's, obviously up to Andrew. If that gets enforced, the winner of that to fight Dennis McCann potentially?
Look, that's another big fight to make. End of this year, that's another big fight we can make. Look, they're all these guys. They're all on course to fight each other. They're going to meet up. Whatever way you want to look at it, it's going to have to happen. And one thing we don't shy away from is making fights like that happen.
Obviously, Liam Davies is also in the fold. Yeah. He's with you. He's had a little pop though at Dennis McCann, saying you guys are protecting him. Is that the case?
Well, we're protecting him. We're doing what we're doing with him, and the same as we've done with Liam. We're bringing them both through, and I'll get that. I hear what he's saying. We put as much love into Liam as we do into Dennis. So at the end of the day, they'll get it on. These fights are going to happen. They're not going to go away. They will happen, and the best man will win. And I've used this sort of analogy quite a few times with you when we did George Groves and we did James DeGale. Both of them went on to win world titles. We've done Lyndon Arthur. We've done him in with Anthony Yarde and
Dubois, Joyce.
That's it. Yeah, Dubois, Joyce. They're both now #1 rated by their governing bodies. One holds a interim title. The other one holds the regular title. So it's not the end of the world. Good fights are there to be made, and good fights are there to be won.
I think these small guys are just very aggy, Frank.
They are, but they keep getting your ankles and they keep biting your ankles and force you in there.
Some quality fighters though in that mix.
Of course they are. I mean, look, we've worked very hard with all of them, and you know what I like about all of them? They've all got off their arses, gone out and sold tickets, made themselves accessible, and they do that. And when they get in the ring, they're bloody good fighters to watch. And those fights will happen. They will happen.
Well, someone who sells a lot of tickets, obviously, is Nathan Heaney, who topped that bill and won that fight in that rematch against Flatley. His criticism, if you like, is you're just a ticket seller. But are we seeing improvements in Nathan Heaney?
I think he's look. Let's be honest. To start off with, he's a ticket seller, selling out small hall shows in Stoke. But he's moved on from there. One, he sells more tickets, which is fantastic for a promoter. But two, he's improved. You can't say he's not improved. He's looked good in these fights, entertaining fights. They're not boring fights. Great atmosphere, and he deserves a shot at in a big fight. And unfortunately, we thought we had it done, but unfortunately, Stoke City's now having a lot of work done on their ground because that's where we'd have gone, and I think we'd have sold the place out. So we're going to he will have a big fight. He will fight for a recognised title in the next few months. I want him out there, keeping him busy. He's a lovely fella. You know why he's a lovely fella? That's why all those people buy tickets, because he's got such a great personality and he's got time for people. And Delilah is a great song. I don't care what. No jiggery wokery with us. Get on with a Delilah.
Last one on that card, Moses Itauma, another very quick night for him. He has his third fight on the Joyce Zhang card, April 15th at the Copper Box. You believe this man is the future of heavyweight world boxing? Yeah, look, he's going to get. We're going to keep him busy, and he's going to get, and the opposition will get stepped up. He's 18 and 2 months old. He's got a way to go yet, but he's ambitious and he wants to fight. He wants to be the youngest Brit to ever win a heavyweight title. I think your son said they're going for Mike Tyson's record. Yeah. That's his ambition. So we're going to give him plenty of fights, but I'm going to be honest about it. But I'll temper that to see how he looks. I'm not going to just throw him in the deep end. This is not a 100-yard or 100 metres, as they say these days. This is a marathon. But he's an excellent prospect. There's no doubt about it. And again, we're showing that the Britain are out there with the best
we've got the best heavyweights. I mean, if you think about it and look at it, it's unbelievable. And I look at me when I started out in boxing all those years and years ago. It was all Americans, all American heavyweights. Brits hardly got a look in. We had a couple of good guys who fought for titles like Joe Bugners and whatever, but they never quite did it. Look at us now. This is the place to be. We've taken over from the Shermans. I mean, this is where it all happens.
To close off, Frank, I've seen some recent articles in a boxing news about yourself. I don't really want to go into the whole Fury Usyk thing. We've done it to death, but it was surrounding that and just general articles. Your take on it? They've been very critical of the quality of cards across the board, across all promotions, and yeah, just your take on boxing news.
Well, I think the last show they called it a barnstormer, the one at Telford. That's the headline, so I'm remembering it. What I don't like about it is it seems in some ways there's an agenda there, and they talk about people having grudges, like meaning me. I'm going to grudge against them. I'm annoyed, extremely annoyed and offended and affronted by the show that we did last April with Tyson, and they alleged that we'd barred certain journalists because of things that had been written about at the time about the mob being involved in boxing, which was total lies. I mean, there weren't no ambiguity. There was lies that we'd put Oliver Holt up in the gods to report on the fight, like we'd banned certain journalists, which wasn't the case. I mean, I remember at the time the Mail asked for 4 passes. We can't put 4 journalists in the front row. You know how it works. It just doesn't work, and we try to accommodate everybody. And and we go by national newspapers and work backwards. And the other ones report fights from the press box. And in the press box at Wembley, you have a screen. Each journalist has a screen, a monitor to watch the fights. Same as they do for football matches. It's the same place. In fact, that's where you watch football matches. You don't sit down the front, you sit up there and do it. And to say that, reporting from the gods, as it was said, we can't report on the undercard because we couldn't see it. Why say bullshit like that? You've done it in other fights. You go and fight in America, you don't sit down the front row in America. You're up in the press boxes at the back. But you report on the undercards there. It was just total dishonesty. And I wrote a letter to them, and they didn't even print it. All they'd done was stuck a couple of lines in about it, saying, "Oh, we got this wrong." That's not good enough. And then I think they was talking about the interview on TalkSport with Alexander Krusik and myself, and Alex. The comments were made, and then they said whatever Warren and Krusik said, the likes of Warren and Krusik, got this wrong or something like that. That's not what that conversation was on the radio. If I remember rightly, and it's easy to anybody, you guys watching this, just go and listen to it, go and download it from TalkSport. It's not Queensberry's fault, it's not Frank Warren's fault, and at the end, it's not Tyson Fury's fault. Not my words. So say what's said. Don't try and make up the words. I just get sick and tired of the boxing news. Yeah, when I look back at Harry Mullen, who was like one of the greatest editors you could ever have, and crusader for the sport that you could have ever had, and I had my ups and downs with him over the years, but I had a lot of respect for Harry. When I look at that, I just sort of tear my hair out. I mean, it's a non-entity magazine now.
I'm guessing there's no copies of boxing news lying around this office.
Nope. If you go in the loo,
I'll find one there.
you certainly will.
Frank Warren, thank you very much for your time, and we shall speak soon. Thank you.
I hope so. And don't forget, come on, you Reds. We've got you soon, haven't we? You've got Chelsea match.
I'm going to cut that bit out.
You got Chelsea. I mean, old Sam, I'd do the best for you, I'm telling you.
Go away, Frank.
I refuse to not be first.
Do we do enough? Well, I never shut up about it.
It must have been about 17. We nicked their guilt rings. Right, the bouncer's guilt rings.
This is no good for me. That's the reality. If you want the honest truth, and I see it every day,